Total failure of imagination, Mr. Destiny.
This guy's angry at me. He's being slightly fiery, but he's giving a pointed criticism to what I'm saying without just like calling me a gamer, loser, wiki warrior, motor mouth.
That Hamas is already regrouping in the north of Gaza.
That's a big issue. That's really bad. The scary thing about that is that...
Can I remind you again, Piers? Ethnic ancestral land.
Was that that some Piers, as I said, there are some Israelis who get confused.
What do you tell people when you want an interview with them that you just have questions? Well, I don't communicate directly. Well, I guess I've emailed a couple, but generally I'm like very, very open with everything. Like, hey, like I do YouTube, like these are my positions on things. Like if I'm speaking to, if it's like a pro-Palestinian person, I'm pointing out that like I generally lean pro-Israel in the conflict, but obviously I'm critical of Israel's actions here and here. So, you know, do with that what you will. If I'm talking to a pro-Zionist person, I try to make sure that they understand that, like, yeah, I generally lean pro-Zionist, but like I have huge problems with the settlements, probably about as much as I do with Hamas. So like, be aware of that. I think the goal is I just want people to feel like they can say, I want people to be arguing and justifying their positions, basically. Like, oh, well, this is why I keep on calling him Fleisher or whatever. That one guy is supposed to be like the fucking spokesperson for all of Jews in Hebron, or maybe all the settlers. Why would they care? You just want to know about them. Why do they need to know about you? Because I don't think people want to feel like they're getting ambushed, or there's like some crazy bad faith like interviewer that's going to be cutting up their shit and character assassinating them or something like that. Are you going to release them while you're there, or start when you get back? I think Yobel said that he can airdrop me some stuff that I might be able to publish every day, like small videos and stuff. But but this is my videographer. I'm super excited for this guy, and he's got like a ton of equipment that he's bringing. Just in looking at his YouTube channel and the stuff he's captured here, it seems like he knows what he's doing. 100% pay wallet, even $1 on your own Patreon or something, so that other streamers can't restream the content and leech. I mean, wouldn't I technically want them to? I mean, no lefty's going to watch this. I don't think anybody's going to watch this like that doesn't like me. So my perspective is already like pretty pro-Israel. Like, if anything, I'm trying to reach out to more, because the Palestinian voice is like non-existent online. The only thing you really see is like their propaganda, and then like big Israeli voices. But like Palestinians from like the Gaza Strip or the West Bank, it doesn't seem like their point of view is represented online ever. I don't know what like Palestinians from Hebron or whatever the fuck you guys call it, or Ramallah or any of these. I don't know what these people think or say or do. Like, it doesn't seem like. Yeah, so these are the people that I'm the most interested in talking with. And then people that do coordination between Palestinians and Israelis. How do you respond when people say you have a cold heart for your views on Israel-Palestine due to your lack of emotional sensitivity? I don't give a f***. I think compassion is good, empathy is retarded. Like, I feel bad for all the people involved. Like, obviously it's a tragic situation for a number of reasons. It always feels like the documentary video is always perfectly exposed. This guy nails it. Yeah, the stuff that I saw on this channel is, yeah, really good. So, hopefully.
Hey folks, Yishai Fleisher here, and Piers Morgan had another discussion.
This guy is supposed to be, people keep describing me to him, the people that are setting up the meeting with him describes him as unhinged. And when they say unhinged, they mean he'll be like very honest and very open about his opinions. He's not going to couch it like political language, which is good. Please, for the love of God, get Ben Giver and debate him. I don't think you understand how crazy he is. You can get crazy vid of him if you're aggressive enough. Again, I don't think Ben's English is very good, so it'll have to be through a translator. So it's not going to be like crazy debate screaming. But also, like, my goal for any of this footage, my goal is not to, I'm not trying to expose anybody or like, oh, like I got this footage of him admitting to this or that, or like I got Olmert talking about, you know, the Jerusalem bribes and blah, like this is not what I'm after. I'm not trying to do that. I want people to like be presenting their thought. I guess this is my naive hope, I guess, is I want to engage as an international person. I want to engage these people with more understanding than I hope any international person has had for them before or their positions before. I understand the desires that Jews have and the feelings in the West Bank and the settlements and everything. I understand these things really well, but I think I also understand the other arguments really well. I can present it rather than like this level 1 engagement that goes along with everything. There's so much like, oh, like, why don't people just be peaceful? Like, it feels like when I watch interviews, because I've done like a decent amount of research and reading for this, just in terms of the people I'll be talking to, and like the interviews are always so one-dimensional. It's like, ugh. So yeah, I don't know, but we'll see. Who knows? Heads up, his name isn't Ben. His surname is Ben Giver. Oh, whatever. Hyphenated loser. Sorry, I shouldn't call it, yeah. I think you should post like vlogs for your experiences on Last Night on Destiny, then just hours-long vids for the convos on the main channel. Well, on the main channel, like I'll definitely be doing, like the interviews and shit are going to be going, like if I'm interviewing prime ministers, that's going on my main channel, bro. That's not getting shoved to the last channel. Like, oh, Destiny chatted with Olmert for an hour and a half. Oh, Destiny chatted with Naftali Bennett for an hour and a half. That just goes on Last Night on Destiny. That's not happening, okay? His first name is Itamar. Itamar? Are you thinking about doing some narration over the footage? Maybe. I don't know, man. One of the things that's so hard, and I'm very critical of people for it, is finding stories that you want to tell or choosing what you want to talk about is very difficult. I have to like have a very macro level goal before I even think about that. I don't know. I might on the plane ride over or back. I might think about it. Does the video guy know audio shit? Yeah, he's recording all that as well. Hi, baby. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard. Like when you do like I have like my little timeline or whatever. Like if you want to talk about like 10 years worth of events, you have to. There's a big, like most of the hard stuff. Well, not most of it, but one of the really hard things is picking like, well, what things do you want to talk about? Because depending on what you talk about, like shapes and shades the whole thing. But hold on. I think baby. I think you just made this one. Okay.
Discussion about the Middle East. This time with a guy named Destiny. And these two guys are out there trying to solve the problems of the Middle East.
Do you actually think going there and seeing Palestine could change your perspective? Talking to people can flesh it out a lot more. Yeah, sure.
At least, you know, two white guys with no skin in the game, and none of them are either Muslim or Jewish. And I think this guy Destiny, as I understand from Wikipedia, is famous for live streaming video games, which is great, but I'm not sure exactly he's a candidate for solving the problems of the Middle East. Let's hear these two guys complain that things are not yet solved and seem intractable.
And on the wider point, I kind of agree. I've had so many of these debates about Israel. It's very hard to do anything that doesn't immediately get dragged to the extremities in terms of the debate. Very hard to reach any point of consensus. You know, and I find that that's the dispiriting thing about that debate, and it may explain why the whole conflict in the Middle East between Israel and Palestine has been going on 75 years and appears so completely intractable. Nobody gives an inch.
But you, Piers, you're going to go into that Hamas rhetoric and be like, yeah, the conflict's intractable, Israel's always a problem, this and that. No, we were on the way to looking past the conflict and talking about a thriving Middle East.
My dude, this is the longest like occupation of any territory, literally in the history of all of the world, I think. Like, yeah, we were. How close are we today to some kind of like resolution or peace deal? Doesn't seem like there's one, but maybe he's gonna drop some big knowledge bombs on me. We'll see.
One that has a strong economy and strong tourism that was on the way, and it's still on the way. So do me a favor, don't be dispirited. Be excited for us.
You aren't going to look into the Rafah incident, or do you think all of the new Israeli atrocities are basically all the same story? I mean, I've looked into it a little bit, but now we just have to wait for more information. It sounds like I don't know if this has been verified or confirmed from anybody yet, but it sounds like what happened was there was a munition that was weaponiered for a precise hit of two Hamas commanders. It was outside the safe zone. I think that's been confirmed. And then the attack went off. It worked fine. They got hit. They got killed. But apparently, or supposedly, there was a Jeep nearby that had like a fuck ton of ammunition or munitions stored, which they're not supposed to have, but they did. And then apparently that exploded and then set a whole bunch of tents and shit on fire, and like 50 some people died or whatever. That's my understanding. That is what the rough story is right now. But I think we need more information. I don't know if we'll get more information, but I think that's about where we're at right now, I think.
And for the world that Jerusalem is back online. And don't think that the conflict is intractable. There's a lot of stuff that's moving forward. So let's see what else these guys are thinking, these two problem solvers.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's on the ground in Israel-Palestine, you have that issue where both sides have their myths that Israel fashioned themselves as these poor people, these poor Jews that wandered into the Middle East and had to fight these impossibly huge Arab armies that had domineering and overwhelming force and power and coordination. When in reality, post-48, Israel was always in a decent position to fight, and that was pretty obvious.
Yeah. You see, no, I gotta correct you here, Destiny, on a few things.
If you want to correct me, in the very, very late portion of 47 and in the early portion of 48, it looked a bit rough. But like past that, like Israel's military composition, ability to conduct war has obviously and always been vastly superior to its Arab neighbors. That doesn't necessarily mean that it was a foregone conclusion that they would win any of the wars that they were involved in, but You said post 48? Oh, that's good. Okay.
We didn't wander into the Middle East. We're a Middle Eastern people. Our forefather Abraham, 3,500 years ago, was from Iraq
Already don't care.
area, and then lower Turkey, Assyria area, and that's where we're really from. Our people has been here for the last 3,500 years. You kind of want to get that straight. And when we were starting that first war in 1948, we had barely 600,000 people living in this land, and we were fighting massive Arab armies. So yeah, so it's not a myth. We are from the Middle East, and yes, we were outgunned, and thank God we defeated our enemies. But yeah, that language of myth is a little bit irksome. Let's keep going with destiny. He's got some destiny words.
I mean, we're bringing up you literally are invoking religion, so yeah, I am going to stick with the word myth there. But
some destinations for us.
Performance in 48, in 67, in 73. It was pretty obvious that they had the military capability to survive. But then on the other hand, you get the Palestinian narrative of they were a poor, dispossessed people in their lands who only ever wanted peace. I think I saw a tweet saying we welcomed Israelis with open arms. That's absolutely not true. I think that the on the ground narratives contribute to the conflict feeling intractable. But
Okay, yeah, the Palestinian narrative.
oh God, I hate it when people do this. Oh God, this reminds me of how Finkelstein will quote scholars when somebody will listen to me kind of represent both sides of an issue, and they're like, oh, actually, yeah, wow, he's super correct when he's on my side, but man, on the other side, he's just really wrong on all of it. God, it drives me crazy. Maybe he's not gonna do that. I'm sorry. He might have things to say for both. My bad.
those contribute to the conflict feeling intractable. But
Okay, yeah, the Palestinian narrative is not, that they welcomed us with open arms, but I think he could have gone one step further, Mr. Destiny. Should I call you Mr. Destiny, or did you go to Destiny school? So maybe Dr. Destiny. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but I want to say that there was another narrative which was out there. Not only did they not welcome us with open arms, there was the let's finish up Hitler's work narrative, or we will destroy you and drink coffee in Tel Aviv, and there will be no more Jewish Tel Aviv, and we'll take it over. So there was these other, let's say, genocidal narratives that Dr. Destiny forgot to mention there. Those are important.
But unfortunately,
those might have been an undercurrent, but genocidal. I don't know if the Arabs would have necessarily genocided all the Jews there. They definitely didn't want them to have any kind of state whatsoever. And they definitely wanted to destroy their ability to gain international support for establishing an independent Jewish state for sure. Would they have genocided them? I don't know. Maybe a little bit. Not all the way. I don't think so. But I could be wrong on that. Definitely a concern, though, especially after the Holocaust. I can see why people might be concerned about that. It's a fair concern to have.
I think internationally, I think we feed into the intractability as well, because people are that conflict is so perfect for everybody to have a really strong opinion. You've got brown people and white people, you've got Jews and Muslims, you've got oppressed and oppressors, you've got Western colonial and Middle Eastern countries. Everybody can have an opinion about this conflict because of the different parties involved, and people are so not level-headed when it comes to evaluating what's going on that they end up hyping up both sides and they elevate the expectations to unrealistic levels, which means neither side is really willing to actually settle for a realistic resolution that might make both sides feel a little bit good and a little bit unhappy.
Well, first thing, that there was some smartness there a little bit. Destiny's words about the fact that everybody wants a piece of this story and this fight and this narrative. I think there's a truth to that. I think everybody can line up in some political way that comports with their local politics and their country's politics, and then they kind of project it onto what's happening here. I can hear that. But then at the end, there's this language of concession, because of this.
So I hope he gives a good answer here. That supports my understanding. One of the big things that a lot of people complain about, I think I've seen Balin complain about this. Obviously, Shlomo Ben Ami has complained about this. Olmert has complained about this. I've watched some interviews talk about this. Is Israelis don't realize that whatever peace looks like is probably going to be painful. That might mean a big retraction of some of the settlement population. That might mean giving up more land than they would otherwise want to if they want to keep some of the settlement blocks. But whatever it is, it's not going to feel good. It's going to be painful. And the Palestinians obviously have to be ready for some amount of pain as well, whether that means, what the big one is the refugee thing. All those refugees are not coming back, they're not coming back to Israel. Absolutely not. And then some negotiation on holy sites that might not feel good. I don't know if there's ever going to be a final resolution to this conflict that has every Jew expelled from East Jerusalem. It's probably not going to happen. But I think my understanding, is East Jerusalem and the refugee thing are two really big ones for the sticking points here. But we'll see. Yeah. But I'm curious if he's going to talk about. Well, actually, I'm going to tell you why Jews don't have to give up a single fucking thing for what we want to happen with Israel.
I can hear that. But then at the end, there's this language of concession, because of this extremity, then nobody's willing to come to compromise. Well, victory is not always about compromise. And I think Israel is not in a place to compromise because it's tiny, because it's a tiny country in this region. And there's nothing to compromise about. When we compromise on our land, we compromise on our life. When we compromise on our land, we compromise on our identity. When we succumb to the jihad, there's really no place to go. Here we are. We compromise it. Here, Israel compromised on Gaza. We gave Gaza away. And we compromised our security, therefore. And so, when you're a tiny little ethnic minority and armed.
Something that I really want to grill Balin, Ben Ami, and Olmert on is Sharon's unilateral disengagement from Gaza. It just seems like, in retrospect, such a not good idea. I'm so curious what the feeling was at the time for that. or if they thought that was a mistake, or if that could have been done better, or what the
the ethnic minority in this region, there really isn't much room to compromise. It's true. But again, one of the things that Destiny misses is that it's not just Palestine, Israel, it's Arab world Israel. Of course, except for those countries.
That's not true anymore, though. Now it's just Palestine, Israel. It used to be Arab Israel, which I agree, and I bring that up a lot. You need to calm the down. You just want to go in, and then you want to go out, okay? You're a terrorist. You're being a terrorist right now. Honey. If you go in there, you're just going to come out immediately. Oh my God. Okay. You do that. Fine. Fuck you. He's being a terrorist.
That are now post-jihad and into normalization, the Abraham Accords countries, and may God make it that, bless us, that more will come. Let's get back to Piers and Destiny.
What do you think a realistic resolution looks like?
I think it's a
Oh God, my feelings on what a resolution looks like changes over time so much. What do I say here? It's about to be super retarded.
multi-faceted.
What?
Piers is asking Destiny, the video game broadcaster, what the realistic solution is for the Middle East. Okay, let's keep going.
Thing, but I would say that it has to be some kind of two-state solution, and both sides need to be willing to negotiate for peace. And this is the hard one: both sides probably need to be willing to sacrifice a little bit for peace.
So great. Like, you think, right, that there's an opportunity for people like Destiny to be a little bit creative. Be like, we've hit our head against the wall for 50 years now, talking about the same junk. And you think that a guy that's sitting out wherever he's sitting with that gun in the background there, you think he'd be like, maybe actually we should change some of the parameters here. Nope. No, thanks. I'm just going to say the same old tired line. Really, here's a moment of total failure of imagination, Mr. Destiny. You should read my article in the New York Times about 5 alternatives to the two-state solution. But really, it's like there they are, Piers and Destiny, and they're thinking, and they're like, well, we're just going to say the most cookie-cutter thing ever. We're just going to say exactly what has always been said. We're not going to break out of any box. And then we'll compromise. We'll take time.
This is... Oh my God. I don't know if I've ever had this happen to me before my entire life. I just realized this. It just scratched a very unique part of my brain. Okay. So this guy's angry at me. He's being slightly fiery. Okay. But he's giving a pointed criticism to what I'm saying without just calling me a gamer, loser, wiki warrior, motor mouth. Interesting. I don't know how much further we get into solutions here. But I understand his criticism here. Oh, wow, your solution is a two-state solution where both sides negotiate? Congratulations. That's what people have been saying for 80 years. Clearly hasn't worked so far. That's fair, right? Hey, Matt, have you considered writing a book? Your perspectives on politics are often counter to mainstream normie intuitions, yet impactful. Another form of political engagement aside from canvassing. Yeah, bro, it's coming out tomorrow. It's called DGG. How the Taliban has changed my... I don't know. I don't think it's something better.
And Israel cut it up.
To be fair, he called you a video game streamer with an undertone. I disagree. He pointed out that I'm a gamer dude, and that what is his qualification for talking about this, which is fair, but it's not just. But then this, I don't know how to explain this to you guys. This criticism of here, the criticism that he's giving me here is a stealth compliment. Is a you can do better than this. Think about something better. Wow, this is your creative solution. I don't know how to explain it or put it into words, but there's a difference between this type of criticism versus oh, of course the video game retard can't think of a single thing because he's a video game retard, blah, 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 blah. He brought up that I hate video games, which is fair. That is my background, right? And it is kind of curious, well, why would a video game? But he's not using that to write me off or whatever. He's critically engaging at least with what I'm saying, which I appreciate.
Always been said. We're not going to break out of any box.
He just said, check out my article in the New York Times instead of giving a better solution, unless I missed that between all the pausing. Well, if he's literally written full articles on this, I think it's fair to point that out. I don't know if he wants to do a 15.5-minute video where 7 minutes. I think he's also, David put this in here as well, that he's a fan of that Emirati solution, where you've got 12 different enclaves of Palestinian autonomy or whatever. So.
Ever. We're just going to say exactly what has always been said. We're not going to break out of any box. Then we'll compromise. We'll take tiny Israel, cut it up. Why don't you tell Taiwan that the best way to make peace with China is to cut Taiwan in half and give half to China, and I'm sure they'll be ameliorated and appreciate the willingness to compromise, and there'll be peace. It's just that's so dumb. And I'm just this moment is the disappointing moment. It's really, bro, you couldn't come up with something different? Well, what are you going to do? Let's keep going.
That means that not every Palestinian is going to be happy with the final resolution. It means that Abbas might have to suffer, even more loss of his popularity, or whatever Palestinian leader rises might have to suffer more loss of popularity. It might mean on the Israeli side, similar to Begin or Rabin, negotiators for peace in the past, you might have to pay a political price for being a negotiator for peace, because sometimes the Israeli people or your Knesset doesn't always support you when you're negotiating peace against either Arab states or Palestinians. But the leadership has to be there, that has to be willing to suffer a setback or some loss initially for the peace agreement, and then both people need to have some kind of tolerance to say, hey,
I don't know if I glaze Israel at the end here, but historically, Israel has had brave leaders that have been willing to come up and suffer huge political setbacks every single time. It feels like every single time Israeli leadership is trying to negotiate for peace, their back is politically against the wall. And I don't think the Palestinian leadership has ever been willing to do that, which is like one of the huge pain points of these negotiations. I don't know if I bring that up or not here, though.
Listen, we might not get everything we want on the old city. That applies to Jews and Muslims, or that applies to Israelis and Palestinians. Or, hey, we might have to do a lot of land swaps in the West Bank. Hey, all of these settlements that are outside of directly near the Green Line, maybe these do need to be torn down. But yeah, the conversation.
He's a big settlement guy. He's not going to like that.
Start the conversation on it yet, because people don't even know if Hamas should exist or not, or if Israel has a right to defend itself, or if maybe murdering 1,200 civilians is a reasonable response to the supposed concentration camp conditions that exist in Gaza.
Yeah, I mean, you did it.
Okay, I mean, chirp, chirp, chirp. You know, it's like, okay, like.
This guy changed my mind. Did you just use the chirp? Did you chirp? Did he use the chirp at me? Did he just call me a chirper?
You know, everybody's got to compromise, and should Hamas exist as the same level as should Israel exist? How about this? How about this? Destiny. Check this out.
Oh, so he's happy that I'm criticizing people that are saying like, well, should Hamas exist? It's like, oh, so you think it's the same as should Israel exist? I'm just trying to illustrate that like the conversation is ridiculous right now. But
here's a peace proposal. Israel is Jewish native land, tribal lands, and the Jews should live in their historic homeland.
I appreciate the way you interpret this critiques, even if they would feel antagonistic to people. Did you hear Wicked Screams talk with Jessica last night about your behavior? Uh-oh. No, I didn't. Somebody linked the VOD. I don't care. It's hard to make people understand this. And also I understand why people don't believe this. I don't mind it if people are like mean at me when they're making criticisms. As long as like the criticisms are like substantive. I think I've said this before. People might think I'm joking. But like if you say some shit like Destiny's like retarded. The idea that Jews are worried that they would have been killed by Arabs in the 67 war, like you can literally look at the leaked cables between XYZ leaders. You can literally look at this, blah, blah, blah. Like his opinion here is like so stupid. I'm like, oh, okay, that's, oh, sure, right? Now you're insulting me. We might go back and fight a little bit on that. But like you're giving me something to like think about at least. But usually it's just like Divorcelli, the wiki warrior, has like a that's so huge that I can't even see past it and it's intimidating me. So I'm just going to make fun of him. And it's like, okay, well, there's nothing here. Yeah. I don't mind if people are a little bit mean or whatever. Or spicy. I think that's fine.
Israel is Jewish native land, tribal lands, and the Jews should live in their historic homeland. And that should be called Israel. And surrounding that should be Arab countries.
This thought, this opinion that, from what I understand, became more pervasive after 67. This is the cancer that needs to rot in Israel, or it's rotting the country and it needs to be cut. This idea of like historic homeland is so damaging and dangerous.
And the Jews should live in their historic homeland. And that should be called Israel. And surrounding that should be Arab countries.
When people say historic homeland as a settler, they're always saying Judea and Samaria, and they're talking about the West Bank. That's what that means. Whenever you hear somebody say historic homeland, that's what they're talking about. Would you ever talk to this guy on stream? I think this guy is going to be the one that gives me the Hebron Jewish tour on the Jewish side of things. This is going to be the guy. I'm pretty sure that's almost confirmed at this point. I think we're in an email chain now, figuring it out, yeah. Why is it damaging and dangerous? Because when you're separating out the, when you're trying to separate out like the what's right, what's legal, what's like historically accurate, and when I say historic, I mean going back 100 years, and now you've brought in a group of people who are like, well, 3,000 years ago, you're fucked. The religious, the messianic hallucinations, I've seen this referred to a few times, the Jerusalem Jew who is like obsessively looking eastward towards like these historic lands is a huge danger towards, if the Palestinians, if any final settlement is going to involve them having any of that land, these people are like some of your biggest threats. Charlie, what do you want? You've been on the stream so much. I can't talk to you about everything in your life. Okay, let me finish this. I'll drag you up. Stop spamming my chat. Jesus.
Lands, and the Jews should live in their historic homeland. And that should be called Israel. And surrounding that should be Arab countries with Arabic names of their tribal and ancestral land, and they should be there. And then we should work in concert for a better future for this whole region, what I call the Abrahamic region, okay? See, wasn't that so much more interesting than this blah, 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 everybody should compromise, everybody's gonna be a little bit sad, and you'll give up on Jerusalem and give part of it to the jihad because the Hamas has a right to exist, blah, 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 and the leaders will all take a hit, and everybody will feel happy because there's Western compromise. It's so tired. I was just like, really, I was just to make this video, I had to watch this thing. I was just like, oh God Almighty, when are we going to be done with this fuddy-duddy old stuff that has never worked, will never work, has no understanding of how the Middle East is? You don't make peace on land. You don't give away land in the Middle East. No tribe is like, you know what? Yeah, I'll give you half.
That's literally, see, the fact that Israel's unwilling to do this, you do have to give away land in the Middle East. Land for peace is how Israel has found peace. Is how they were looking for after the 6 Day War. They were willing to give it up for, they were willing to give it back to Syria, the Golan Heights, for peace, and Syria wouldn't do it. They were willing to give back the Sinai to Egypt. They did do it. They got peace. Like land for peace, especially conquered land, is kind of like, at least for Israel's MO for operating with other people, has kind of been what was on the table historically. Now with 500,000 fucking settlers living there, it's a lot different, but
my properties, we could have peace. It doesn't work that way. You show your utter ignorance of Middle Eastern culture and style if you think that the way to work it out is by giving some of the land to the jihad. It don't work that way. You want to know how it works? You hold on strong. You hold the line. You get respect.
This was the thought leading from 67 to 73, arguably, that led to the disaster that were the early days of the I've heard so many Jews give me shit on how to say this now, back and forth, Yom Kippur or Yom Kippur, whatever, that war, the beginning of that was this idea of like, well, actually, we don't need to give anything away. We're going to infinitely fight everybody and win, and no matter what. And yeah.
You give respect, you get respect, okay? We are a small ethnic, Israel is a small ethnic minority, armed and defended to make sure that nobody kicks us off our tribal lands. And when we're strong, then and our economy strong and our army strong, we push back on the jihad, the other Arab countries thank us. And then we can get rid of the bad guys and start having trade and having
the bad guys
and having tourism, and not this dumb idea that maybe we should just give away parts. Let the jihad take over it like they did in Gaza, and then compromise, because that's so beautiful. I don't know. It's just tiring to see these two non-Middle East, non-Jewish, non-Muslim white guys discussing how we should compromise around here, not knowing one thing about how this region operates. But it's destiny, I guess.
Debate with Jake Yuga, who's been on this show many times. In it, you said about deaths in Gaza that the ratio of Hamas to civilians killed were good ratios. But I'm so used to people just saying unhinged shit about me. I'm even appreciative that the way that he writes off my opinion is to say that like these are two random white dudes from another part of the world who don't have a personal investment here, blah, blah, blah. Even that feels better than like, isn't this guy a cuck? Isn't this guy divorced permanently? In it, you said about deaths in Gaza that the ratio of Hamas to civilians killed were good ratios. But I'm not sure about that. I'll tell you why. The problem I have with the whole death rate in Gaza, especially when there's a comparison made to World War II and how many German civilians were killed and so on, is that there is a unique population in Gaza of 50% children. Now, 50% of the 2 million are under 18. That's 1 million kids running around in Gaza. And already we've seen 30,000 civilians killed, with 70,000 more wounded, many of whom are children. And that is something I've not seen in any recent conflict. And that's what makes it uniquely horrific to people.
Okay, so first thing is, we don't trust Hamas numbers. That's just the thing. The so-called Palestinian causes lie. They lie about numbers all the time. That's number one. Number two.
I'm sorry, the quote was divorced all the time. True.
So many children, maybe they shouldn't line the place with rockets and teach brainwash to murder and to rape. Like if there's so many children, then maybe they shouldn't use them as human shields to start up with us and to try to kill our children. And I have one message that I want to make clear. When we strike Gaza, we have a little message, which is don't start with us. Don't start with us. We will mess you up. We will fight back. We will push back. We will make a war against you. Now you're going to say, Piers Morgan's concerned about the children. Yeah, were you concerned about the children when they were brainwashing them? Were you so concerned about the children when in Syria, 500,000 people were murdered and almost 2 million displaced? Come on, Piers. It's not real. You're so...
Bro, these are my talking points. Excuse me? Did he pre-watch?
Children, when they were brainwashing them to kill? Were you so concerned about the children when in Syria, 500,000 people were murdered and almost 2 million displaced? Come on, Piers. It's not real. You're so concerned about the children. Are you so concerned about the children, Piers, that you're making sure that refugees get out? Is there any American or British boat, French boat right there picking up the children so that we can have our war and get rid of the bad guys? Are you pushing to pick up the kids out of there? No, you're not. What you're really doing, Piers, is that you are making those children that you're arguing about a human shield against Israel pushing back.
Oh my God, he's not going to play my answer because he bit my whole answer here, and then he's going to end the video. That's what he's about to do.
Fighting the terrorists and fighting the jihad and fighting the Hamas. You are with your words, are putting those kids as more important than our war to clean out the nests of terror that not only attack Israel, but also subdue local Arabs and destroy their lives, take their children, brainwash them, steal their money, take their land, put tunnels underneath. So when you talk about those children, you are actually aiding and abetting, probably not intentionally, but you are aiding and abetting the enemy. Okay, so I hope you guys understand that Piers and Destiny really do not have solutions. The video keeps going, but I think I'm going to pause it now here because I think I've had enough personally. In any case, Yishai Fleisher TV is here to serve you and help us understand how to actually move things forward and not hear old fuddy-duddy messaging that gets us nowhere because it's like hitting our head against the brick wall again and again and again. And so I hope that you subscribe here
you say
to Yishai Fleisher
fuddy-duddy?
TV, where the real destiny is moving forward, the Jewish people in the land of Israel. God bless you guys, and shalom.
Oh, this is what I need. Ground me out. Thank you. As for Destiny, he continues to embarrass himself every time he pretends to know anything about the Middle East conflict and history. Listen to the debate between Simcha Rothman, hoping it was an eye-opener for Destiny because Destiny could hardly say anything, and when he did, his answers were not relevant to Simcha's points. Simcha won the debate hands down with factual evidence that Destiny became lost in due to his lack of subject knowledge. This was one where I didn't know how to, because this guy would just flatly deny that there's a blockade. There is no blockade in Gaza. I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean blockade? There are no ships there. Or I don't even know what is. This guy that I debated on Eli's channel. That was a good meme debate, I guess. Yeah. I think Destiny would benefit greatly from having a discussion with you. From what I've seen, he seems to generally want to learn the truth and would be great for his audience to hear your perspective. He's cared too much about feelings and less about fact. Damn.
From New York by Professor Norman Finkelstein, political scientist and pro-Palestine activist, and from Ephrat in the West Bank by Yishai Fleisher, the spokesman for...
Damn. Look at this guy's jacket.
Jewish community of Hebron, and Minister Ben Gvir's former advisor for international affairs. Well, welcome to both of you. Dr. Finkelstein, let me start with you, if I may. We are on the verge, it seems, of an inevitable full-scale invasion of Rafah. Prime Minister Netanyahu has made that clear. It's also clear that America, Israel's biggest and most powerful ally, is extremely concerned about this. In fact, Secretary of State Antony Blinken has said not only does he think it's a big mistake for Israel to do this, but he believes that the war on Hamas is not really working, that Hamas is now regrouping in the north anyway. And so on every level, from the American assessment, this is something that shouldn't be happening. What's your response?
Well, I can't speak to the military situation because I have no professional knowledge of it.
I feel like I can make a bingo at this point. There's he always runs back to these same... Should we make I haven't listened to him speak in a while. Could we, it's going to be something about open air prison, apartheid. It's going to be something about genocide, especially with the ICJ or ICC mention. It's going to be, what are their big Finkelsteinians? Something alluding to international law. Do you think he's going to make something about I only deal in facts? He says that a lot. I only deal in facts. I haven't heard him say that as much recently though, but he used to more.
I can't speak to the humanitarian situation. The International Crisis Group, a very respected mainstream organization, put out a report about 3 weeks ago in which it says there is no middle ground. If there is an invasion of Rafah, there's going to be mass hunger, mass starvation in at least northern Gaza and perhaps elsewhere. And they were emphatic about the fact that you have to make a choice. Either suspend the invasion or accept that you're going to cost the lives of thousands and perhaps more than thousands of civilians in Gaza. The second point I would make is that, at least as of the last few days, the Undersecretary for Humanitarian Affairs, Martin Griffiths, has said that no aid is coming through to Gaza anymore, that Rafah has been shut down, that Karam Shalom has been shut down, and that Gaza is now in a position where it was a few weeks ago when Israel was effectively not emitting any humanitarian aid to Gaza. So at a humanitarian level, should there be a full scale, there is an invasion right now in large numbers.
This is 1.5, yeah. He's a painfully slow speaker.
Of people, I guess the current estimate is 300,000. Large numbers of people have been displaced. Displaced where is unclear because it's unclear where to go. But if there's a full-scale invasion touching the core of the Rafah refugee population, then one can, at least according to the International Crisis Group, expect mega deaths.
Yishai Fleisher, I watched Dr. Phil's...
This was 2 weeks ago. This is more current. He's not doing his normal talking points. It was about this particular invasion, so we might not hit any of these. We'll see. Did we get the mega deaths? Did the mega starvation deaths happen? Did the mega civilian deaths happen? Did we get to the mega deaths part?
Interview with Prime Minister Netanyahu last night, and he was emphatic, Netanyahu, that there would be no stopping Israel going into Rafah, and that they had to do this because Hamas had to be eliminated. But it would seem from American intelligence that Hamas is already regrouping in the north of Gaza, which surely should be of significant concern to Israel, shouldn't it? If the strategy is simply not working and Hamas is regrouping now in areas that were thought to have been places where Hamas had been removed, doesn't that suggest this?
That's a big issue. That's really bad. The scary thing about that is that that would probably be your strongest justification for redoing the occupation and maybe even reestablishing settlements in Gaza. Is, Hamas is already reappearing in places that we've cleared. The only solution is we need to actually have a full-time presence now. We need to go back to having a full-time presence in the Gaza Strip.
This military strategy is not working.
First thing, Piers, I want to thank you so much for having me on the show, and I also want to use this opportunity to wish Israel a happy 76th Independence Day. Tonight we celebrate that. Israel's the most exciting project of the Jewish people in 2,000 years, so this is a big deal for us. Today was Memorial Day, now it's Independence Day, and so I really appreciate the chance to speak about these things with you today on your important show. With regarding to Gaza and the Hamas war, okay, so we're going to have to fight them in Rafah, and if we have to fight them in the north, we'll do that as well. We're in a war. We're in a war. We're not here to just give it up right now just because it's not working here or there. We're at a war with people who have dug tunnels 15 stories deep, people who want to destroy the state of Israel. That is their charter. It's a religious charter. They say that they want to get rid of all of Israel, starting with Gaza. And if we have to pivot to the north, we'll do that. The Jewish people are used to conflict. We've been through a lot of conflicts throughout our history, 3,000 years of conflicts.
Is there Israeli guy, the same one we watched the YouTube review of Destiny from earlier today? Yeah. I think this is going to be the guy giving me the Jewish tour of, hopefully of Hebron. We'll see.
But we're still here. So if we have to go north, we'll go north. It doesn't. What follows from your question is not that we should just give up and not attack in the south. It just means that we'll have to move on our attack north, and we're going to deal with this thing because we have no other option. I want to remind you, Piers, that it's a proxy war as well. If we lose this thing, we're going to lose it to the Iranians, who just declared that they have a nuclear bomb. We have to fight this. We have to prosecute this war to the end and send a signal to the Middle East that we're not joking around.
Okay, let me play you Antony Blinken, Secretary of State, what he had to say on the weekend shows in America.
We're seeing parts of Gaza that Israel has cleared of Hamas, where Hamas is coming back, including in the north, including in Khan Yunis. As we look at Rafah, they may go in and have some initial success, but potentially at an incredibly high cost to civilians, but one that is not durable, one that's not sustainable. And they will be left holding the bag on an enduring insurgency because a lot of armed Hamas will be left, no matter what they do in Rafah. Or if they leave and get out of Gaza, as we believe they need to do, then you're going to have a vacuum, and a vacuum that's likely to be filled by chaos, by anarchy, and ultimately by Hamas again.
No, Yishai Fleisher, the problem is America.
Obviously, there would be a power vacuum. The goal would be to bring back in the Palestinian Authority or to something obviously, right? Obviously. Like, there's an obvious statement. I don't know what the point of this statement is.
You're going to have a vacuum, and a vacuum that's likely to be filled by chaos, by anarchy, and ultimately by Hamas again.
No, Yishai Fleisher, the problem is America is, as I said, America is Israel's biggest ally by far. Also, biggest supplier of military hardware, which President Biden's already said he's going to stop a lot of that going to Israel if they go into Rafah. But to have the Secretary of State of the United States expressing such concern about the military strategy, surely that has to concern you, doesn't it? Because ultimately, if you kill all these innocent civilians in the process of getting rid of Hamas, but you end up not getting rid of Hamas, that is a failed war, isn't it?
Okay, so first thing with regarding to civilians, we have to remember that civilian deaths is actually part of Hamas's strategy against us. They want Israel to kill a lot of civilians so that Piers Morgan can ask, hey, what's going on with the civilians, so that the Antony Blinkens can give Israel a hard time. So that is in their interest. They're actually going against the Geneva Convention's stated laws that you're not supposed to put in civilians in front of.
Yeah, but Israel is also killing. Israel is also killing thousands of civilians. You accept that?
Yes, we are, because we're in a war.
Right.
We're in a war. And we basically, it's like this, Piers. If we don't do it, then basically we are sending the war onto the next generation. We're just passing the buck. We're kicking the can down the road. It means that my children are going to have to prosecute the next war. We've already seen that. We've already had many wars with Gaza. This is like war number, 5? So if we don't take care of this business, they're going to come stronger at us. They're going to declare victory.
I don't know what the rhetorical maneuvering around that point is. It always just looks bad when you've got dead civilians. This is why Hamas loves dead civilians. It's just a hard point to argue on. You always sound unhinged when you give this take. I feel like my line of questioning is good for this, that I haven't heard somebody else try. I don't know how you'd counter this, but like, if dead civilians is such a big deal, where are the Hamas humanitarian safe zones? Why hasn't Hamas built any bomb shelters? Why does Hamas invest so much infrastructure for tunnels for their military, but none for their civilians? Why isn't Hamas working with Israel to set up a humanitarian corridor? Why is that I'd be curious how somebody would squirm around those questions, because like the dead civilians thing, you just have to like scream it over and over again. Dead civilians, dead civilians, dead civilians, dead civilians, like, and you're just like,
victory. We can't have that. We can't have Iran be victorious in Gaza as it has been in Yemen, as it has been in Iraq, as it has been in South Lebanon. We can't have that. So this time, October 7th is an opportunity to clean house and to make sure this doesn't come back again. Now, people on the more right-wing part of the spectrum believe that Israel should actually hold on to Gaza and have minimally a military presence there, if not more. Because if we just back out of there, what happens is the next Hamas or the next evolution of Hamas will take over. So yeah, Piers, bottom line is it's a war, and we got to fight it.
Right, Norman Finkelstein, Yishai Fleisher said this.
I wonder if I can briefly respond to that.
Yes, you can, yeah.
briefly? 2409. I wonder how brief this response will be.
Thank you so much. I think there's a bit of a misnomer here by designating what Israel's aim is to simply impose a major military defeat on Hamas. I have no doubt that that's correct. However, I do believe that what you're describing, quoting Anthony Blinken, aim is to simply impose a major military defeat on Hamas. I have no doubt that that's correct. However, I do believe that what you're describing, quoting Anthony Blinken, as a failed strategy is only half correct, because Israel has another goal. The goal is to finally solve the Gaza question for once and for all. As the other person said, there have been many high-tech Israeli massacres in Gaza. It's actually quite a large number, more than 5, but I won't bother with the figure. And the goal right now is not just to...
He was referring to how many conflicts there have been. There's even more than I am aware of. There's like, there's 2008, there's 20... There was a big one in 2012 that I hadn't even read about. There's 2014, there's 2018-19, there's now 2023, 2021 I think was a big one. It seems like every couple years there's like a big thing. Yeah. Eliminator, thanks for the 5 subscriptions.
Mow the lawn in Gaza, but to extirpate, pull out from the roots every blade of grass in Gaza. That is to say, make Gaza unlivable. And in terms of that goal, which is separate and discrete from the goal of inflicting a military defeat on Hamas, that goal is coming close to achievement. They have made the north of Gaza and they have made central Gaza unlivable. Those landscapes can now be described as
I'm too lazy and I've got too many projects going on right now. I can't do it. I really wish somebody would keep track of the predictions that people make, because I feel like people are allowed to squirm away from bad predictions too often. How many predictions have been made about starving Gazans? How many are going to start starving to death? How many were made for there? How many was made for this invasion in Rafah that you can't? How many said you can't evacuate that many millions of people? How many said that you can't do these strikes without there being thousands of civilians dead? How many said that you can't that Israel is hurting all these people down here and won't let them leave? How many have said that they're going to force them into the Sinai? They're not going to let them back in the north. There's so many bad predictions. You shouldn't be able to make this many predictions and be wrong and still have any amount of credibility. You should be, at some point, you should be hurt from that. But,
howling wilderness. The only area of Gaza which is not physically unlivable, that is the only area that has not been completely reduced to rubble, the only area is Rafah. And so when Prime Minister Netanyahu says he wants to finish the job in Rafah, that, in my opinion, yes, it does include a component of trying to defeat Hamas. But the bigger goal, in my opinion, judging from what the Israelis have said, their bigger goal is to make Gaza an unlivable place. And so the people of Gaza, in the words of Israel's former head of the National Security Council, Giora Eiland, the only choice that will be left of the people of Gaza will be either to stay and starve or to leave.
Lindsey Graham, the American senator, gave an interview also at the weekend. I want to play a clip from that, Norman, and come back to you for your response to this, because he raised this
2409, that was a 2.5-minute response. Nice.
Interesting point.
Well, why is it okay? Well, can I say this? Why is it okay for America to drop 2 nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki to end their existential threat war? Why was it okay for us to do that? I thought it was okay.
Jesus fucking Christ, what a stupid fucking comparison. It's a billion different Jesus. Okay.
Do whatever you have to do to survive as a Jewish state.
Senator, again, military officials say the technology has changed, but let me ask you about how all
these military officials that you're talking about
let me ask you something.
Full of crap.
I mean, strong words there. Now, I think it's been misinterpreted as him saying that he wants Israel to use nuclear weapons. He didn't say that. What he was saying was, if it was deemed morally acceptable, as many felt it was, albeit horrendous death toll, but to end the war morally defensible for America to deploy nuclear weapons in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, then why is it not morally defensible for Israel to do whatever it needs to do to eliminate the threat of Hamas, given that Hamas is on record after October the 7th, saying they wish to do the same thing again and again and again, and have a charter which, when it was first written, said their obligation was to get rid of all the Jews?
I think there are a couple of aspects to that question.
Has Hamas at all, to this point, attempted to negotiate a ceasefire directly with Israel, or has it only been with third parties, i.e. Qatar, Egypt? Is it normal to negotiate with third-party countries acting as a mediator? Sometimes, especially with Israel and the Middle East, some countries don't want to recognize the existence of each other or the existence of certain groups. I don't know why Israel and Hamas don't negotiate with each other directly. I don't know if that's because Hamas doesn't want to communicate with Israel, or if Netanyahu doesn't want to recognize and communicate with Hamas. I don't know what the actual answers are. I'm not sure. In the past, there have been countries, like a lot of the Arab states don't recognize Israel. So it was called shuttle diplomacy with Kissinger. You've got like the State Department people from the US flying back and forth to negotiate. And then at other times, Israel, I think prior to the Oslo Accords, didn't want to negotiate directly with the PLO or recognize the PLO. So, I mean, it's both sides do it. I don't know who's the fault, who doesn't want to talk to each other directly between Hamas and Israel right now. I'm not sure.
The first aspect is I don't think there is a broad consensus outside the United States, leaving the U.S. apart. I don't think there is a broad consensus that it was morally acceptable to drop atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In particular, you could say that the Hiroshima question is debatable, but I don't believe anybody seriously argues that Nagasaki was morally defensible.
Can we not get too much into World War II? Let's talk about our situation now.
Yes,
we got
that's
some
fine.
serious things to deal with right now.
That's fine.
Let's get to it.
Right, I'm trying to be.
Let's not get into academic mumbo jumbo.
Destiny, a while back, you were very confident, stating that the white flag shooting was staged/done as a manipulative ploy. Old Palestinian dude, why don't you apply the same level of scrutiny/skepticism towards the recording IDF released today? I don't what level of scrutiny or criticism? I don't even know how are these two situations even remotely comparable?
I understand, but let's get to it. The bottom line is that Israel is a tiny country, and if you look at the map, you'll see we're a tiny.
Oh my God, he brought props.
Jewish state within. That's right, but we got to get to it and not talk about Nagasaki or Hiroshima. What's the difference? Because we're a tiny Jewish state within the Arab Muslim world. And if we don't defend ourselves, then we're an ethnic minority. We're an armed ethnic minority.
Let Norman Finkelstein
Piers
respond.
Piers, you have to decide whether you're the moderator or he's the moderator.
No, I'm the moderator.
You asked me a question direct. Okay, well then I'm trying to be responsive to your question.
Yeah, I understand.
So now on the question of Israel and Gaza, either you do or you don't accept the laws of war, what's called international humanitarian law.
Okay, we got the international law one here. Okay, that's good. Okay, we hit one of them. I didn't mark off the genocide ICJ, ICC one because I'm waiting for him to acknowledge one of those two. We got 1 of 4 right now.
If you do accept the laws of war, then Israel has to abide by those laws of war, and the fundamental law of war is called the principle of distinction. You have to distinguish between targeting civilians and targeting combatants. So I don't believe Lindsey Graham is correct, except if in his opinion, he said Israel has to do what it has to do. That's his essential.
I'm sorry. I am going to go hard because I just don't like Norman. I think he's a fucking retard. If you're being critical of Israel and you're being good faith, there are 3 huge principles of conducting warfare. The principle of distinction is not really what you're looking for, which is differentiating between combatants and non-combatants. What you're really talking about is the principle of proportionality. I think that's what you're actually talking about. There are 3 big ones. It's distinction, it's proportionality. I have this in my notes. Fuck. What is the third one? I know it. I just don't know what the big 3. It's distinction, it's proportionality, and it's somebody say it. Somebody give me the third one. What was the third one? Oh, you guys not paying attention during our... Wait. It would have been under debate prep. It would have been under Finkelstein. It would have been debate outline. Oh, and precaution. I think these are like the 3 huge ones that get brought up a lot. Distinction, meaning that you obviously can't target people that aren't combatants. Proportionality, meaning that if collateral damage is going to happen, there has to be a big benefit to your overall war effort. And then precaution, meaning that like you can't just surprise attack and like, oh shit, like a bunch of civilians didn't know and now a bunch of people are getting killed or whatever. Consent. Constant care must be taken to spare the civilian population. Civilians and civilian objects, all feasible precautions must be taken to avoid and in any event minimize incidental loss of civilian life, injury to civilians, and damage. These are your 3 big ones, I believe, when you're talking about your conduct for war. The reason why distinction doesn't make sense here is distinction only is a valid criticism of Israel if you truly think they're just shooting anybody, like combatants or militants. But that's kind of an unhinged opinion. A more precise criticism would be you're ignoring proportionality, meaning you can't just blow up 2 militants to kill, you can't blow up or 50 people to kill 2 militants, right? That would be like a better criticism. But he actually could just have the unhinged opinion and he'd just be stupid. It is Finkelstein, so.
Israel has to abide by those laws of war, and the fundamental law of war is called the principle of distinction. You have to distinguish between targeting civilians and targeting combatants. So I don't believe Lindsey Graham is correct, except if in his opinion, he said Israel has to do what it has to do. That's his...
But Hamas doesn't? No, Hamas doesn't do any of these things. But nobody cares, I guess. The enemy needs to differentiate themselves too, though. No? Doesn't distinction change when you're up against ununiformed guerrilla force? No, you still have all these same obligations. They don't change just because the enemy population conducts warfare in a different way. You still have all these obligations. But the enemies are engaged in warfare that's illegal as well. They're failing to help their civilian population as well, which is also a positive obligation you have.
Central argument, but that means, as I understand him, Israel doesn't have any obligation to obey the laws of war.
Well, okay, let me just say on that, Norman. On that, just to clarify, he wasn't advocating that Israel should break international law. He didn't say that.
Destiny, in one instance, you are sticking out a strong position of people being willing to risk getting shot in order to further a Palestinian narrative. In the other, you seemingly don't entertain the possibility of the recording being faked. Not saying it is fake, just curious whether it appears to be a great difference in the level of skepticism. Are you asking me why I don't think that the IDF faked an entire recording? I mean, it's possible, but that would be an exceptional thing to do. That they faked literally an entire recording. That they faked the footage. They faked. It's possible that they could do that, but I don't know. I don't know if there's a history for it. Has the IDF ever faked footage like that? If I had a history of them doing that, I might be a little bit more willing to accept. Like, okay, like this might have happened. Yeah, I don't know if there's like a precedent for that. And the risk to that would be insane. That if they got caught doing something like that, like their credibility would be so unimaginably destroyed. A lot of people think the PIJ phone call from the Al Ali hospital explosion was fake. Yeah, but they just say that because it was the IDF that released it. They just say it's fake. They think it's fake because they say it's fake. But there's like no evidence that it's fake. You could argue there's no evidence that it's real, except the IDF. I think the United States said it was real too. Didn't the U.S. intel back Israel on the on gathering the evidence for that phone call? But I would assume that in other circumstances you would be skeptical of 2 days later a recording is being released, perfectly outlining every point that would incriminate the recorded persons. What do you mean? When am I skeptical of you got to give me like a more accurate thing to map or compare this onto. Who's like, I don't even know what I would compare this to. A military releasing footage showing like where they bombed in a particular site, where people have already caught the bombing on camera. Like, I don't even know what you would compare this to.
And I would throw it back at you, I guess, at this point, which is, do you now, or maybe you have always done, but do you accept that Hamas broke international law, given it was a governing body of Gaza at the time, that when it committed the act of atrocity with its terror attack on October the 7th, that was a breach of international law? You accept that?
I would say there are two aspects to that question.
Oh, boy. He's not going to do the under international law, you have a right to defend yourself, because that's the way that he's using that is not true. You don't have the right to just launch a war against your neighbors, especially to kill civilians, but...
National law. There is no law on preventing people living under an occupation from resisting that occupation.
This is just a lie. This is just wrong. You need a justifiable cause for war. You can't just make shit up and say, but this is norm. He likes international law when it suits him, and he likes it when it doesn't. Personally, I think the biggest part of my debate with Finkelstein, and nobody even cares about it, like this, I feel like anytime anybody ever talks about this guy, this like one clip should be cited, and then it's like, oh, this is a very unserious person.
Absolutely not. You're dead wrong.
Mr. Borelli, please don't teach me about the English language.
So the declaration of Judge
I said plausibility is the same concept as qualifying.
The court is not asked at this present phase of the proceedings to determine whether South Africa's allegations of genocide are well-founded. They're not well-founded. They're not even well-founded. The court isn't. You said that plausible was a high standard. It is absolutely not. It is a misrepresentation of the strength of the case against Israel, just like the majority of the quotes they have in this case are. And also, you said it was an extremely well-founded case. They spend like 1/4 of all of the quotations, some even pulled from the Goldstone report, that try to that actually deal with the intent part. Mm-hmm. Which is, by the way, I think you guys, I don't know if you use the phrase the dolo specialis, that the intentional part of genocide.
Sorry, I don't know that term.
I think it's called dolo specialis. It is the most important part of genocide, which is proving it is a highly special intent to commit genocide. It's possible that Israel could.
That's mens rea.
No, the mens rea. Yes, I understand the state of mind, but for genocide, it's called dolo specialis. It's a highly special intent. Did you read the case?
Yeah.
It is
Mr.
a highly
Borelli,
special intent.
I'm going to ask you again.
Genocide. Yes.
Please stop displaying your imbecility.
Okay, I'm sorry if you think the declaration of the judge is imbecile.
Don't put on public display that you're a moron. At least have the self-possession to shut up. Did I read the case?
Putting my display on camera. If you're comfortable putting yours in books.
Borelli,
okay?
I read the case around 4 times. I read all of the majority opinion, the declarations. I read Aaron Barak's declaration.
Then why are you lying and saying plausible is a high standard?
Because I said, even reaching the benchmark of plausibility is a very high standard in the world. It's the equivalent of a regional player qualifying for an Olympics. It's still 2 steps removed. You may not be on the team and you may not get a medal, but to get qualified, which in this context is the equivalent of plausible.
Would it be fair to say, and I'm no lawyer, and many people watching and listening will not be lawyers, but would it be fair to say that the key point that you made your initial order and ruling upon was whether or not there was a plausible case that should be taken on by the court of genocide in the case of Israel's actions in Gaza after October 7, and you quite clearly decided that there was a plausible case? Is it right to say that's at the heart of what you decided?
You know, I'm glad I have a chance to address that, because the court's test for deciding whether to impose measures uses the idea of plausibility, but the test is the plausibility of the rights that are asserted by the applicant, in this case, South Africa. So the court decided that the Palestinians had a plausible right to be protected from genocide, and that South Africa had the right to present that claim in the court. It then looked at the facts as well, but it did not decide, and this is something where I'm correcting what's often said in the media, it didn't decide that the claim of genocide was plausible. It did emphasize in the order that there was a risk of irreparable harm to the Palestinian right to be protected from genocide. But the shorthand that often appears, which is that there's a plausible case of genocide, isn't what the court decided.
Would it be this part?
No, now you're doing what Moeen said. You're becoming very selective about the law. If you want to forget about the law, Hamas had every right to do what it did. It had every right to do what it did, according to you, not to me, because you want to forget the law.
Do you still support the Houthis shooting random ships?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's a violation of international...
That's it. It's like the destruction of, like, you don't take this person seriously anymore on this topic.
Get the law.
Do you still support the Houthis shooting random ships?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's a violation of international law, so you play the same game.
Absolutely. And were there a power during World War II who had the courage
using armed force? Under international law,
Piers, for God's sake,
it is
he's
neutral.
on record stating that he was jovial at that.
Yishai, I will let you respond. Just let him finish the point. I'll come to you.
All right. Let's get to it. All right.
However, in the course of its armed resistance to the illegal Israeli occupation of Gaza, it broke the laws of war to the extent that it targeted civilians, and the evidence thus far indicates that massive atrocities occurred on October 7th. However, we have to distinguish that, which was clearly a breach of international law, from the right of a people under occupation to use armed force to end the occupation.
Okay, let me go to Yishai Fleisher. I mean, on that point, do you agree with Norman Finkelstein's assessment of what happened there?
First thing, October 7th was a horrific massacre. There's no international law that's going to back that. But we know, and you had this on your show, we know that Norman Finkelstein celebrated the murder of Jews. He's on record. You tested him. You saw that he was not telling you the whole truth. You know, he said, I, for one, will never begrudge. It warms every fiber of my soul. The scenes of Gaza's smiling children as the arrogant Jewish supremacist oppressors have finally been humbled. So forget international law. He's happy that Jews were murdered. You know, that there was some soldiers that they were murdered, their male members were cut off and put in their mouth, and then the terrorists took out the phones and sent pictures of that to their mothers. All right, what are we talking about here? Let's get back to common sense. We have a war here. Again,
Let's say instead of a recording of Hamas being released, a recording of Netanyahu and Smotrich was released containing, did you see how we blew those suckers up? Yeah, they really had it coming. I'm so glad we will be getting away with this. Haha, yes, the world is so gullible. So glad we got so many civilians. Are you asking me if I would believe that? Like, generally when leaked footage gets, like, publicized, I think that the footage is probably real. People faking whole footage like that. Like, if you want examples of me believing this, I can give you 2 really good ones. One, that whole statement that Netanyahu made, what was it about, like funding Hamas, or Hamas is good for like keeping the Palestinians divided? That's not a direct quote. That comes from a leaked conversation in a Likud party meeting, right? I'm pretty sure that quote is true. I don't think I've even questioned, like, did this actually happen? I was curious what the context surrounding it was, and I found it, but that was the leaked quote. Also, when we watched the videos of the Israeli snipers near the wall, the separation border, I'm pretty sure one of the snipers talks about, like, oh shit, like, nice shot or whatever, when they shot that boy. And I'm pretty sure I don't think I questioned the authenticity of that footage. I was like, oh yeah, shit, like, soldiers probably say some fucked up shit, even if they make nice shots, even if it's fucking kids or whatever. Like, I don't think I questioned, like, is this real footage? Did this actually happen? I don't think I even asked that question. So yeah, no, I don't. Like, it's pretty rare I don't know if there's ever been a case where there's been like completely faked leaked footage that didn't even happen. There's been like kind of like staged footage. Weren't you skeptical of the intercepted phone call of Hamas during the whole hospital bombing? Not really. I just said I wasn't going to really factor it in because 1, I don't know if people fake calls. 2, I don't know if anybody could authenticate the call. And 3, I know that you fucking retards that are poising us. I say you guys, but I mean, most of you probably are lions of Zion at this point. But like most people aren't going to factor that in as evidence. They just don't care. Like, for instance, the interrogations of some of those Hamas or PIG captured people that Israel has released the interrogations of, there's probably some value in that, but I don't even bother to use it because people already think that the IDF fakes and lies about everything. So I'm not even going to bother to source any of that because I know people are going to say, oh, they were tortured. None of that actually happened. They all lied about it. This is all staged. I was like, I don't even waste my fucking time, but there's probably some value in there. But that's why I didn't source any of the leaked phone call for the Al Ali hospital thing.
Against an intractable enemy that wants to destroy Israel. Even President Biden, who's not a big fan of this war, has already said that Israel has not done atrocities, is not committing a genocide. That's already passé. Even Norman Finkelstein's beloved ICJ basically did not go into saying that Israel is doing atrocities. They kind of bunted and said, please be careful in the future. That's it. So now we're fighting an intractable enemy. As I said before, it's
just as a real quick thing, you cannot source the ICJ and use them to exonerate Israel of war crimes because they're not being tasked with investigating those war crimes. That's a bad example. But
proxy war as well, and it's not an occupation. Very sadly, my nation, Israel, in 2005 gave away land. I was there with Arabs. I was there with Arabs and Jews in Gaza in 2005 when my army came, the Israeli army came and took us out of there. The Arabs there begged us. I still remember their hands through the fences like this. They said, "Don't leave. You don't understand who's going to take over." Now, what Norman Finkelstein is going to tell you is that all day long Israel's committing atrocities. If you go to Telegram, you could see the videos of Hamas shooting civilians and women yelling, "You have destroyed our lives, you have destroyed our land, you have killed our children." Hamas is a cynical organization. Its leaders are billionaires.
Where's that video
Its
at?
whole thing is to make Israel look bad. It has no care for its own civilians. It steals the food that comes there. There's been thousands of tons of food that has come there, okay? But they steal it, they keep it for themselves. So what are we talking about? Let's just get back to common sense. We have a terrorist organization, it's controlling a piece of land, we're fighting them, trying to minimize civilian casualties, but yeah, it is war, and we're fighting it. Yes, they're putting their children in front of our munitions on purpose. And that is a very sad situation, but we cannot stop prosecuting this war. For us, it's existential. We are a tiny ethnic minority in this region.
You're tiny in geographical size. You are enormously powerful, actually, in terms of military power and in terms of political power.
And you see what happened.
And you have as your number one ally the United States of America, which is the most powerful superpower in the world. In January this year, your former boss, Ben-Gvir, argued that the departure of Palestinians and re-establishment of Israeli settlements is a correct, just, moral, and humane solution to this war. I mean, that cannot be right. Surely, I mean, the solution to long-term peace is not going to come down surely to Israel filling Gaza with Israelis. Is it? I mean, that would surely cross a line which nobody would think could be remotely achievable in terms of a sustained peace.
This is a big question, Piers, and a good one, an important one, which is really a much bigger question about how do we move forward. First thing is, we have a war with a jihad. We don't have a war with Arabs. We don't have a war with Palestinians. We have a war with jihadists. Jihadists, they control the landscape because they're very violent. Mostly they're violent against their own people. I know this firsthand from Hebron. I cannot tell you how many examples I have of Arabs that want to make peace and relations with Hebron. I have excellent relations with many Arabs in Hebron, and yet they are persecuted by the Palestinian Authority, in Gaza by Hamas. Why? Because they want to move forward in normalization with Israel. Israel wants to normalize in this region. At the end, we are not very different than the Arabs. We have a similar DNA, we have a similar language, we have a similar religion. We're the children of Abraham. And some people are recognizing that that's the way forward. That's the Abraham Accords. Okay, that's the UAE and Morocco, maybe even Saudi Arabia in the future, in the near future, I hope. We have a way forward. And the way forward is a way of peace. What is peace? A strong Israel on its land, on its ancestral homeland, surrounded by Arab states on their lands. And those states together working together to make the Abrahamic region successful and thriving. But there are elements that are jihadist elements. These elements want to undermine that. They want to destroy normalization. They're against Israel. They're also against moderate Arabs. They're against Christian Arabs, Arameans. When I speak to non-Jewish residents and citizens of Israel, like Druze, like Cherkessi, like Arameans, like Bedouins, like pro-Israel Muslims, they all say the same thing to me. You have to be strong against the jihad. You got to crush it, or else it's going to take over. It first and foremost crushes the average Arab, the average decent person who wants to normalize with Israel. So the answer is like this: fight with the jihad. Be bad to the jihad so that you can be good to the good people. That's the way forward.
Okay.
It's not to be wishy-washy, to back up,
Let me go to Norman Finkelstein. Your response to that proposal?
I'm not sure what the proposal is. What I hear is a lot of statements that seem to be completely detached from.
I get you, however, it's the nature of the recording that I find weird. Secret recording in a room where one does not expect to be recorded is different than a phone call. Remember the 10 crack commandments? It's very convenient that two people call each other and hits every incriminating point. Imagine a call between drug dealers and they mention location, amount of drugs / money, time of deal, descriptions of clothing, etc. I mean, maybe, but I don't know if we're dealing with very sophisticated actors here and the rules are a bit different in terms of how people are evaluating it. So like, here's something that I find unbelievable. Wait, fuck. This doesn't just search for titles? Hello? Wait, I can do this. I can do this. I think it's unbelievable how much high quality footage exists of like Palestinian violence on the Palestinian side. So like, for instance, you just said, isn't it crazy that there's like the perfect recording that exists that incriminates them on every level? That is a little bit crazy, but like, they've literally taken footage themselves and published it of them doing that, right? This footage... like, this footage is taken by a Palestinian militant. This footage is taken literally by them, crossing the border, going to the other side, planting improvised explosive devices. This is their own footage. So... I mean, like, this is more incriminating than any leaked phone call or the footage of the, like this shit. Like, oh, don't you think it's convenient that you literally have an actual Hamas soldier walking down a row of porta potties, shooting into each one? Like, sure, wow, they're like so evil. Of course, they would just shoot into every, like, would they even waste the ammo on this? Like, and this is their own footage. So when you ask me, again, I'm going by like historical record, like, well, what have people tended to do, right? This is why when somebody brings up like, oh, did you hear that Hamas murdered a civilian because they thought that they were protesting too much or some shit? Like, yeah, I can believe that. They've done that before. They've killed collaborators or whatever. But when somebody else said yesterday when they were shaking around that headless baby, when somebody was like, do you think that they cut the head off that baby to put him on camera? And for that claim, I was highly skeptical. Because I've never, ever, ever heard of that before. I've never heard of Hamas killing their own people like that, beheading babies. So I didn't believe that immediately because there's no history of that type of behavior. Or same thing when people said for the mass graves, people were like, oh, some of these bodies came up with their hands tied behind their backs. Do you think that Hamas, maybe they tied their hands and then took pictures? I've never heard of that behavior happening before. So I'm immediately way more skeptical of that than some other behavior. Just these are like the heuristics I'm using. None of these are 100%. It's just like, what do people tend to do or what have they historically been caught doing and blah, 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 yeah.
Or what the proposal is. What I hear is a lot of statements that seem to be completely detached from reality, at least as I understand it. Let's start with one of his earlier statements. He said in 2005, when Israel was redeploying its troops from inside Gaza to the periphery of Gaza, the people of Gaza were begging the settlers to stay. There were approximately 8,000 settlers in Gaza at that point, and they controlled about 30% of the land. The 2 million Palestinians in Gaza were given about 70% of the land at that particular moment. Number two,
Norman, I just want you to know
at
I'm
that
talking about from
time,
experience,
the head
not
of Israel's
theory.
national...
I was there.
Is that true? That would be that is a crazy distinction if that few Israelis are given that much land in the Gaza Strip. I'm not saying it's impossible. I mean, I'm sure it could have happened. I was curious if there's like an actual number on that somewhere. What is Finkelstein sourcing or citing for that?
They talked to me.
Sir,
I was there.
You really have to act as... Piers, many of these Israelis...
He's so ass mad. I can't believe this fucking loser cries to the moderator so much. Fuck, I should have done this against Lex with him and pointed out that he did that. Well, this is after that, to be fair.
Israelis think the whole world is the West Bank and Gaza, where they get to control everything. So you really have to remind them that this is a civil conversation.
Want Israel to stay and be strong. Don't change the topic. It's very simple. I just said to you, I was there. I saw them with my own eyes. They talked to me. They said, don't give up this land. And the same thing that Al Bedouin said, don't give up this land.
Okay, let Norman finish. Because he listened to you.
Okay.
Norman did let you speak and then responded afterwards. Afford him the same courtesy.
You got it.
So at the point where, according to the other speaker, the people of Gaza were begging the Israelis to stay, according to the head of the National Security Council at the time, Giora Eiland, and this is March 2004, he described Gaza...
He's about to do that one quote, one of the 3 quotes that he uses. He's going to do the open air prison. I like to have like discrete facts and discrete events because that's how and then internally I'll have like a narrative that works, but I like to think discreetly. Finkelstein seems to work very discreetly as well, where he doesn't seem to have a good understanding or broad contextualization of the facts that he talks about, but he's very artistically cherry picking like 1 or 2 quotes, but he's never able to contextualize it. And that was the whole debate with Benny Morris twice, right? And other people where he has like 1 quote and then he just wants to work off of that 1 quote where he can't actually, but he's not contextualizing anything. I know he's about to use the open air prison quote. Hold on, where's my current conversation so I can check this one off.
As quote, a huge concentration camp.
I'm sorry, the huge concentration camp quote. Yeah, that quote that he's pulling from, by the way, it's not even like an analysis of. It's not even an analysis of the conditions in Gaza. It's like a one-sentence throwaway thing, although the UN does the same shit here.
So I find it a little bit far-fetched to believe
one Israeli,
that the
Please don't interrupt.
Have you read anybody else? Like
Yishai,
one guy, that's the guy. That's
Yishai, let him finish.
Over and over again.
Please let him finish.
The question here isn't even, do you read one Israeli? The question is, what was the underlying analysis to that guy saying the concentration camp thing? Why did he say it was a concentration camp? Norm won't answer that question. Coleman Hughes already posed it to him, and Mark Lamont tried to ask Norm that question on a YouTube video, and Norm literally chirps for 20 minutes to avoid actually answering the question.
Sorry. Sure.
So I find it a little bit far-fetched that the inmates of a concentration camp would be begging for the guards to stay in the camp. That to me is an unusual. It's an unusual scenario. Now, this talk about the people, Israelis reestablishing illegal settlements in the illegally occupied Gaza Strip. That to me, there is a problem there. I was reading an interview yesterday with an expert on the subject. Israel has deposited, as of now, there are about 37 million tons of destruction, about 37 million tons in Gaza right now.
What even is that measurement? 37 million tons of destruction. He also uses these really weird quotes and comparisons where it's like, how am I supposed to feel about that? What even is the steelman of the open air prison angle? I've never thought it sounded convincing. The problem is that people misrepresent the conditions in the Gaza Strip. The conditions in the Gaza Strip are not these horrible fucking, like they're living in squalor or whatever. That's not true. But it is tragic that if you are born into the Gaza Strip, you are essentially like in a prison because you can't fucking leave. You can't travel the world. You can't leave to study. There are some permits given, but they're exceptionally difficult to get. And that is really fucking shitty. Like, that sucks. Nobody wants to be locked to one strip of land for your entire fucking life. But that's bad enough on its own. Just talk about that. That's bad. That sucks. And something should change about that. But you don't have to make up a whole bunch of other stupid shit to make it sound worse than it is.
Which means it would take, according to this expert, it would take about 10 years to clear the rubble in Gaza before you can even begin
don't worry, we're going to clean up Gaza because we want it beautiful. We're going to make it beautiful again.
Okay.
Make Gaza beautiful again. That's the
Now, in terms of, thank you very much. You'll probably ask the international community.
We live here. This is
the international community. Well, actually, on the subject of living there, I did spend quite a lot of time between 1987 and 1993
in Britain studying Lebanon, or in Lebanon studying Lebanon? Where was he in these 7 years?
Al Khalil, which is sometimes called Hebron, and
damn, he lived for 7 years in Hebron? Is that true? Or wait, hold on, I need to re-listen to that again.
Well, actually, on the subject of living there, I did spend quite a lot of time
spend quite a lot of time
between 1987 and 1993 in Al Khalil, which is sometimes called Hebron, and it's again rather far-fetched to believe. 4,000 years. Yeah, right. Well, it's Al Khalil.
Okay, go ahead.
This is the meme that Jews and Arabs do against each other, where they like the West Bank, no, Samaria and Judea, no. Like a lot of the, I think there are several towns that have like an Arab name and then a Jewish name, and sometimes people will fight over what you call it. It's fucking retarded. This is It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia like argument, or no. Curb Your Enthusiasm argument. Sorry. Somebody said the Arab name is derived from the Jewish one. That might be true. I don't know if that's the case. Arabs and Persians do that shit too. They do the same shit in Northern Ireland. Undergrad studies at Birmingham University in New York. He was an ardent Maoist. Received his master's in poli-sci in 1980 and his PhD in political studies from Princeton. Oh, here we go. During the first Intifada, he spent every summer from 1988 in the West Bank as a guest of Palestinian families in Hebron and Beit Sahor. Is a Palestinian town east of Bethlehem. Why doesn't he talk about this more? I feel like this gives him so much more credibility than any of the other stupid shit he ever talks about. This is really interesting. Where he taught English at a local school. Finkelstein wrote that the fact that he was Jewish didn't bother most Palestinians. The typical response was indifference. Word has been passed to the Shabab that I was okay, and generally, the matter rested there. He recounted his experiences of the Intifada in his 1996 book, The Rise and Fall of Palestine. That's not what I've been led to believe in terms of Jewish people can just go, well... Oh, actually, well, hold on. This would have been before the redeployment in Hebron. Was this in 97? It was after Oslo 2. Hold on, let me find it. Redeployment of Hebron, IDF, Wikipedia. I don't actually remember. It was. Okay, so this is in 97. So, this was still an area that was kind of under control or guidance or security, I guess, by the IDF. It was after the after this redeployment was when a lot of the city was withdrawn from. It's separated into like H1 and H2. A lot of the cities withdrawn from, and it's given over to the Palestinian Authority exclusively, I believe. Does this mean he speaks Arabic? How would he teach? No. If you ever want like a life hack. I don't mean to sound mean. I don't mean to sound mean to people. I'm sorry. But like, if you ever want to travel the world or see other countries, the easiest thing to do is to be a teacher of English. You literally I don't even think you need a fucking certificate. You don't need any fucking qualifications. Countries will just take you. You live there. You don't have to speak the native language. You just like teach English. I don't know why or how this works, but I know so many people that have done it. You just go somewhere and you teach English. Yeah. What's the difference between open air prison and saying realistically you're not able to leave? It doesn't feel like a super loaded buzzword like apartheid or genocide. No, because when people say prison, open air prison, they always talk about how atrocious the conditions are afterwards. Technically, I don't actually think open air prison. I don't actually think that's a bad description, because it kind of is. Actually, even in that Atlantic article, that woman describes it. Yeah, I think she might even use that terminology, or she uses something similar to it. I need to rename these. Oh, I named this one appropriately at least. Not true. For any place you want to go, you would need a degree. Okay. Maybe you do need a degree, and I'm exaggerating. Fuck. What am I looking for? Fuck. I don't know if the PDF is like rendered well enough. The refugee camps are much larger than those in Lebanon, small towns by Middle Eastern standards. They are by no means luxury establishments, but many people live in a nastier state in American and European slums. The poor villagers of Gaza are not as well housed or cared for as the refugees. The Gaza Strip is not a hellhole, not a visible disaster. It is worse. It is a jail with a magical long white sand beach and a breeze and devoted welfare workers to look after the prisoners. Her description of going down to the Gaza Strip and then talking to people. This was written in the 60s, I think, before the Six-Day War. But like, yeah, I don't think open air prison is a bad way to describe it. People just assume so much when that prison thing and like the concentration camps and the apartheid and everything is like given. But okay, sorry. Boom, boom, boom.
It was the Arabic name for it. It came about 1,400 years ago. It's been Hebron for 4,000 years. Jews have been living there for 3,700 years.
You see, you have a problem, sir. The problem is you want to discard what the international community has to say in the subject. Under
I don't have a problem.
law,
I am very plugged in. Yeah. There's many people in the international community that are with us. If it's Geert Wilders in Amsterdam, if it's President...
I don't know if I could ever do another debate with him. This sounds like ableist, like in an actual mean way, not just like in consumer retarded. But I wonder if it's like, if you speak this slowly, I feel like you have to have some kind of, I think it's like disrespectful by default.
Want to discard what
especially when he rambles so much. Like if you're going to speak this slowly, you better like, your 4 maxims, whatever that debate coach said, you better max the out of those. You can't be rambling and chirping and giving random shit if you're going to speak at this speed. You need to be very fucking concise with what you're saying.
You have a problem, sir. The problem is you want to discard what the international community has to say in the subject. Under
I don't have a problem.
law,
I am very, very plugged in.
Yeah.
There's many people in the international community that are with us. If it's Geert Wilders in Amsterdam, if it's President Trump who recognized the legality of Jewish presence in Judea and Samaria, certainly in Hebron, we've been there for 3,500 years. I think somewhere in international law they can figure out our rights in this ancestral city.
Right. Under international law, the whole of the West Bank, including...
I'm so glad once I'm back, okay, I'll be done with this country, okay? It's just like these weird appeals like international law. It's like has nothing of value to like contribute to the conversation.
East Jerusalem and Gaza are occupied Palestinian territories. So under international law,
it's our ancestral land.
or I should say,
under the, and nothing's going to stop us.
To be fair, I guess this guy's not even really responding to what Norm is saying. To be fair there too, I guess.
National Criminal Court Rome statute, sir, you're a war criminal because you are illegally settling in occupied Palestinian territory. You should be...
Ooh, ICC, ICJ. Does that count? He didn't bring up genocide. He brings up the occupation shit.
Prosecuted under international law as a war criminal.
Well, many people disagree with that. Many legal scholars disagree with that. That is not the law. That is not the law. That's the law according to... As Benny Morris said about you, Finkelstein is a notorious distorter of facts and of my work, not a serious or honest historian, right? It's on your Wikipedia page. So do me a favor. You're not going to tell me exactly...
Oh, no.
The laws. You're not even a lawyer. I'm a lawyer, and it happens to be that we have every right to live in our ancestral homeland. We won that land in defense of wars, which is an international law principle. We purchased the land, which is the simplest principle of free markets. We bought it from Arabs. The 3 religions all recognize the Jewish people as living in this land. If it's the Quran, the Christian New Testament, the Torah, they all recognize us as from this land.
But what nobody, Yishai, if I may jump in, what people are not accepting are the continuing attempts by Israelis to expand the settlements. Almost nobody I speak to thinks that is anything but a deeply inflammatory thing to be doing.
Can I remind you again, Piers?
All 3 of the arguments this guy put out are not the best arguments, but
Piers, this little white thing.
You don't need to, because when I went, okay, listen, let me explain. When I went to Jerusalem about 12 years ago and interviewed Prime Minister Netanyahu in Jerusalem, he showed me a very similar map that was hanging behind his desk, and he put his thumb on Israel.
Do you think if I'm in Israel, if I keep calling it West Jerusalem, do you think Israelis would get mad at me?
He put his hand on all the much larger Arab countries. I get it, but what it doesn't show...
My pictures. Yes.
Is the reality that Israel is the most powerful country in that region in terms of its military, and certainly in terms of its support from the United States. So this idea that it's a tiny, impoverished little part of land is a mischaracterization. But my question to you again, Yishai, is this. Hang on, let me finish.
I never said that.
Let me ask you the question again, which is, how do you justify the expansion of settlements, given that almost nobody I've spoken to on the show thinks that this is anything but inflammatory?
Oh my gosh, Piers, for God's sakes. First thing, I never said the word impoverished. We're a powerful little country, great. But look what happens when we drop our guard for 1 minute. They cream us. Let's be real about what happened. We got creamed. And now we're fighting a war to fix that wrong that happened. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2 is Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, so-called, is the heartland of the Jewish people.
So-called.
It's where we're from. Our whole DNA, everything, our language is based on these places. We're from these places. This was called the Jewish state 2,500 years ago by the Persian Empire. It's called Yehud Medinta, der Judenstaat, the Jewish state. This is the heart of our land. Yes, Israel has not formally annexed Judea and Samaria, but it holds on to it as territories. There's 500,000 Jews, so-called settlers.
I think these arguments are incredibly effective, though, against people who try to talk about, like, the Palestinians have always been here, blah, 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 blah. Finkelstein's not really making those arguments, though, so he's kind of boxing shadows.
Myself, who proudly live in the ancestral homeland. This is where we're from. This is where we're going to stay. Nothing is going to get us out. And no amount of international law mumbo jumbo, no amount of academic gobbledygook is going to get rid of simple, plain history. And many people, including the Trump administration, recognized our rights. So we're talking about big America. You've said to me now on the show 3 times, you said to me, America's against this war. There's many Americas. Right now, it's a Biden America. Tomorrow, it might be a Trump America. A Trump America recognizes our right. So we're going to be patient, as we have been for 3,000 years. We're going to be...
Look at this. YouTube chat. Quote, it's our ancestral land. Destiny's audience based. Who's saying that? What? Are you, again, boxing shadows?
Strong, continue to build our 3rd Commonwealth, which is celebrating 76 years of independence today. Mazel tov, we say. And we're going to keep going. So don't give me this stuff about that we're not going to live in Hebron. Hebron is where we're from. Our forefathers...
Do you believe,
that's where we're going.
Before I go to Norman for a response to that, do you believe then that a natural extension of your logic is that you should also be entitled to the whole of Gaza going forward? Is that your belief? That actually, that is all... Do you believe that is all Israeli land?
Absolutely. Piers.
Okay.
That was a good question for Piers. Ooh, and he just owns it. He's like, yeah, it should be. That is all of our land. Then the next one should be, okay, well, what about the Palestinians that live there?
I was one of the people.
Okay, but
wait, let me finish. You asked a big question.
That's a massive
you asked a big
question.
It needs a real answer. That's right, and it's a fair question. You're right. And the answer is simple. 2005 disengagement was an awful mistake. We should control that land and govern it. It's a tiny piece of our tiny land. And of course, pro-Israel, non-jihadist Arabs and others, Palestinians, Muslims, whatever they want to be, that don't hate Israel should live there and be successful there.
But what right? Sorry, I'm sorry,
but
listen,
Jews live in
Yishai, what right does Israel have to just take over Gaza, having obliterated it?
Yes, there was never a Palestine there.
Listen,
no.
You can defend yourself against a terror attack. This surely is exactly the kind of occupation that Norman was talking about, only on a massively bigger scale. You're unashamed about it. You want to occupy Gaza.
You're not talking today to one of the liberal Jews. You're not talking to a government spokesman.
Clearly.
You're talking to one of the settlers. Right. I'm talking to you about what we think is right. What we think makes sense also in terms of how to manage this region.
The problem is,
Yishai, you give up your land to the jihad, they attack you.
Yes, but the problem is you are sounding genocidal in the sense that you want to get rid of...
What? Genocidal? Did you not hear me say... Piers, I respect you tremendously, so don't put silly words in my mouth.
He's going to say, did you not hear me say that I think that all the Palestinians that can live in peace with the Jews should stay here?
Now, really, truthfully, I watch you, and I love your work, and you open things up for a lot of people. Don't say silly things. That was very silly. I never said anything about genocide. Holding on to a piece of land, holding on to minorities. Every power in this world has minorities inside of it. Every country that's a big country has other minorities, other peoples inside of it. Did I say we should genocide the Arabs? We have a fight with the jihad. I said, and it's on tape, I hope you play it, I said that minorities that are non-jihadists, that are pro-Israel, are going to be successful in this land.
Yes, but again, I was simply asking you,
genocide.
Do you think that Piers does a reasonable job with these kinds of debates formats? Kind of, but the problem is like this argument here is this is a very in-depth argument. And I feel like you have to have a lot of background info to even be able to discern between what both people are saying. And Piers probably doesn't have that background, which is fair. But neither of these guys are responding to each other at all. It's just it's a meme session, I guess.
Yishai, what right does Israel have to occupy Gaza after this? I don't think you have that right.
It is our historic homeland. Look it up in Wikipedia. You'll see what is the Jewish story in this place. It was ours 3,000 years ago. It was ours 2,000 years ago. Herod built whole cities in Gaza. One of the most ancient mosques in Gaza was before that.
Let me go to
synagogue. It's our ancestral land.
Let me go to Norman. Norman, you've been waiting patiently. Your response to this, where Yishai's made it absolutely.
And then he's just going to say international law. The international community is very clear on this. The international community is united on this. In 2004, the UN said that this was an occupation. It's wrong.
Clear. He believes that there should be a complete occupation of Gaza by Israel.
No, not an occupation. A sovereignty. Israeli sovereignty.
Well,
it's the same thing.
I would say that
first step.
Norman.
I would say that he has one thing correct, and that is I agree with the Israeli Information Center for Human Rights in the Occupied Territories, the organization known as B'Tselem, which stated about a year ago that actually de facto there's only one state. There's only one state between the Mediterranean and the Jordan River, and that one state is based on the principle of Jewish supremacy. And what B'Tselem wrote in that report was that
he fucks him up so much. I want to be realized he's mind fucking him. Norman's just trying to fucking trudge forward, and this guy just says a thing, and Norman's trying so hard to just maintain his train of thought.
Principle of Jewish supremacy. And what B'Tselem wrote in that report was that what B'Tselem Piers, as I said, there are some Israelis who get confused and think the whole world is the West Bank and Gaza. I wish you would remind him that we're having a civil conversation here, and I have the right to respond.
Yes, you do. You do.
Thank you so much. So within that one state, namely between the Mediterranean and the Jordan, as B'Tselem said, it's effectively an apartheid state where the Jews have privileges and rights which are denied to Palestinians. In the case of Israel, they're second-class citizens. In the case of the West Bank, they have no rights whatsoever apart from those that they're given under international law. Let's say they don't have the essential right to vote. In the case of Gaza, since roughly, you can say 1991, they've been immured in effectively, as Giyar Island put it, they've been immured in a concentration camp. And now the question is, how do you resolve that situation? And there are three possibilities immured in a concentration. You can say 1991, they say they don't have the essential right to vote. In the case of Gaza, since roughly, you can say 1991, they've been immured in effectively, as Giyar Island put it, they've been immured in a concentration camp. And
I'm sorry, I actually have no idea. What happened with relation to Gaza in 1991 that was especially bad for Gaza? I have no concept, no idea. Does anybody know what he's referring to there? Isn't he quoting someone, probably when their book came out? Israeli imposed closure on the movement of goods and people to and from Gaza dates back to 1991 when Israel canceled the general exit permit for Palestinians in the occupied territories. This policy was initially temporary, but eventually developed into a permanent administrative measure in March of 93. What does this mean, though? My understanding is Palestinians have never been allowed to freely leave the Gaza Strip, even when Egypt controlled it. I thought that was the case. Fuck. I wonder if there's a good book for specifically relating to just the Gaza Strip. Israel releases paper detailing formula of Gaza blockade. Since Israel took control of since Hamas took control of blah, blah, blah. Subscribe. At this point, I should subscribe to Haaretz. I fucking read it enough. He said a name, but he mumbled it. Maybe, I guess. I don't know. Hold on.
In the case of Gaza, since roughly, you can say 1991, they've been immured in effectively, as Giora Island put it, they've been immured in a concentration camp.
Oh, no. Giora Island. He's just talking about an Israeli leader that talked about something to do with, what he's bringing up is nothing to do with the concentration camp analysis. It's just a stupid fucking, what is the source of this stupid quote? It's Giora Island from an Israeli debrief relating to the unilateral disengagement plans. This quote is from 2004. Repeating a personal view that he had previously expressed to other USG visitors, NSC Director Island laid out for Ambassador Dejrejian, I don't know how to pronounce this, a different endgame solution, which is commonly envisioned as the two-state solution. Island's view, he said, was prefaced on the assumption that demographic and other considerations make the proposal for a two-state solution between the Jordan and the Mediterranean unviable. Currently, he said there are 11 million people in Israel, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip, and that number will increase to 36 million in 50 years. The area between Be'er Sheva and the northern tip of Israel, including the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, has the highest population density in the world. Gaza alone, he said, is already a huge concentration camp with 1.3 million Palestinians. Moreover, the land is surrounded on three sides by deserts. Palestinians need more land, and Israel can ill afford to cede it. The solution, he argues, lies in the Sinai Desert. This is that quote that he's pulling from. Every time he references this guy, the guy's not doing like an analysis of the conditions in Gaza. That's just like what he's referring to it as. That's it. It's just a reference. So it's irritating when he brings it up, like it's some big like condemnation of, or some big concrete analysis that determines the conditions are like that of a concentration. All three of the quotes that he brings up commonly are like this.
And now the question is, how do you resolve that situation? And there are three possibilities. You can try to just subordinate that Palestinian population forever. That's one possibility. A second possibility is you can make Gaza and the West Bank uninhabitable and hope the people, by hook or by crook, leave. And the third possibility, as you put it, was genocide, or as Prime Minister Netanyahu.
And there's no possibilities that Arabs can live in Israel? Is that what you're telling me?
No, I think I actually.
Arabs cannot live in Israel? That's it? Like the only answer is genocide? You can't. We have 2 million Arab citizens in Israel. It's only genocide's the only option? That is just hot air. It's just hot air. It's just, there's no truth of the matter. It's just TV bluster.
Okay, let Norman finish his point.
Movement between the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Norwegian Refugee Council reviews the background. This is published in 2016. After occupying the Gaza Strip and the West Bank in 1967, the Israeli military declared these areas a closed military zone. In 1972, exit permits were issued with unlimited duration, granting Palestinians practically free movement between the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, and between the two occupied Palestinian territories and Israel, including East Jerusalem, which Israeli law had been applied in contravention of international law. Israel allowed Palestinians to relocate from the Gaza Strip to the West Bank and vice versa, with relative ease and updated new addresses in the Palestinian population registry. Okay, I'm curious, like, how many actually took advantage of these exit permits? This is 2. General exit permit number 5, Judea and Samaria, 5732, 1972. A similar permit was issued for the Gaza Strip. Gaza Strip and West Bank residents who married Israeli citizens or Israeli residents could submit a request for family reunification, and after a process of over years, obtain legal status in Israel. This reality facilitated the renewal of family ties. In 1948. In 88, during the First Intifada, the military revoked the unlimited exit permits. In 91, the military decreed that residents must obtain individual permits. The consequences of this change were not immediately apparent, since Israel issued many individual permits that remained valid for long periods of time. However, over time, the Israelis adopted a stricter policy. In March of 93, after 16 Israelis were killed by Palestinians in Israel and in the occupied territories and different attacks, Israel imposed a general closure of the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, during which no one could leave the OPD or enter Israel without individual permit. The general closure has been in effect until today. Huh. I wonder how many people actually took advantage of those. Okay, sorry.
So if your other guest is saying that he would accept the slogan in South Africa, one person, one vote. If that's his position, I think that's a reasonable position, but he should be clear about that, since half the population between the Mediterranean and the Jordan is Palestinian Arab, and likely, given current birth rates, the majority between the Mediterranean and the Jordan will be Palestinian Arabs. Is your other guest stating, and this would be useful for your audience, is your other guest stating that he supports...
This thing, I see Norm does this tactic a lot, where he won't say the name of the person, because he's an actual 4-year-old.
Your other guest stating, and this would be useful for your audience, is your other guest stating that he supports one person, one vote between the Mediterranean and the Jordan, and he accepts that the majority over time will be Palestinian Arab? Does he accept?
The interesting counter question to this, I already know Norm's supposed to be like, sure, fine, we accept that one person, one vote. Do you agree then that that means that no Palestinians are allowed to come back then to Israel proper? The 5 million refugees need to be made refugees in other places or need to go through a proper immigration process? I wonder if... It's not really a direct counter. It kind of is, but one person, one vote. There's no way him on the right. There's no way that Yishai accepts that, though. You can't possibly accept that. The population split would be like 50-50.
Mediterranean and the Jordan, and he accepts that the majority over time will be Palestinian Arab. Does he accept that?
Okay, Yishai?
Fabulous. Thank you very much. First thing, Norman, again, my name is Yishai. It's easy to remember. But in any case, I remember your name. Isn't that nice? I want to tell you that finally you got to something serious because you now say there is an option other than genocide to actually become citizens of the state of Israel. Okay, we can talk about it. I wrote an article in the New York Times called A Settler's Vision for the Future of Israel. I outlined 5 alternatives to the two-state solution. I talked about pathway to citizenship. I talked about residency. I talked about Israeli Arabs or so-called Palestinians having a right to vote in the next door Palestinian state called Jordan, remaining.
One of the solutions that people float, I've seen this talked about, is the idea that you might have like a West Bank where Jews live there, but they still vote for Israel. And you might have Palestinians that live in the West Bank, but their vote actually goes towards politics in Jordan. This is like I don't know how realistic, how much support this has ever had, but
here as residents, but actually voting in their country, Jordan, right next door. I laid out a lot of options, and those options are to be discussed.
Yeah, as I understand
I was very happy. I was very happy, Norman, that you were able to reach a conclusion that there's an option other than genocide, and that Arabs could actually live within.
Until the first Intifada or uprising in 1987, over 100,000 Palestinians freely commuted into Israel on a daily basis in cars with West Bank plates without serious obstacles. That's wild. Oh, wait, that's from the West Bank. I'm sorry. I thought that was from the Gaza Strip. I don't know how many go today between the West Bank and Israel. I'm not sure. I think Hamas started to gain popularity in the Gaza Strip. It was in like the late 80s, early 90s is when they started to gain popularity, right? I haven't done like a big like dive into like the history of Hamas. Hamas was founded by a Palestinian imam in 87 after the first Intifada. I think they started to become more popular in the late 80s, early 90s. And then, yeah, by 2006, basically, they were able to win a majority of those seats.
I want to ask you, Norman, just remind me, how many Arab
I don't ask for the right to vote in Canada. I'm an American citizen. I don't ask for the right to vote next door in elections in Canada. What I was asking you
we can discuss it. That's why I wrote an article.
Slogan in South Africa of one person, one vote for the entire population between the Mediterranean and the Jordan. That seems to me the democratic solution.
That is something to discuss, and that is at least, I'll tell you the truth, Norman. That one I accept as being a reasonable proposal. I don't like that proposal, but I accept that at least being a starting point, as opposed to the farce that you said before, which is that there's only genocide.
Gentlemen, you know what?
People are going to live here, Piers.
Given it's taken us about 45 it's taken us 45 minutes, but we finally got to a place where there was at least a tiny fragment of agreement, which seems to me a sensible place to leave this debate. But thank you both very much indeed for, as always, giving both sides in a strident way, and I think the viewers will learn a lot from that. And I appreciate you both joining me. Thank you.
Thank you, Piers.
Wow, cute.